Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs, and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. In today's video, we're going to go back and explore that flooded cave that led out into a more interesting looking dry cave. But before we do that, you may have noticed the landscape around here has changed ever so slightly. There are some spruce trees over there in the distance. I'm growing trees down here, and the farms that we set up temporarily for pumpkins, melons, and so forth have cleared up. There's also a wandering trader outside the front of my house. He won't leave. I don't know why. I've told him I don't accept offers at the door, but nevertheless, he is still just hanging out. So I have decided that on my Twitch live streams, and this is probably the only time I'm going to plug my live streams in the series, so don't worry too much, I'm going to be doing some of the behind-the-scenes work for this series that simply doesn't need to be in a YouTube video because we've already covered it before. I'm mostly going to be gathering basic resources like chopping down trees, gathering a few more different wood types, and it's something that I recommend doing in your own time on your own schedules if you want to, because frankly I find setting aside a little bit of time each week to gather resources like wood means that you don't have to pause during the building process so much, looking at you, Fishing Shack, in order to just go and gather more wood for a project. Like if you've got enough wood in stockpile, you never really need to break the flow of building. You can just go ahead, grab all of the stuff you need, and get to it. And since there's a limited amount of tutorials I can make about the process of chopping down a few trees, I'm not going to be doing too much of this on YouTube. It's all going to be happening on my Twitch streams, and that might also go for some behind-the-scenes work on things like farms when we eventually get to the point where we're making larger resource farms. Let's say, for example, we make a guardian farm for Prismarine out of one of the ocean monuments you'll find out there in the oceans. I plan on doing the majority of work like that on streams, so that people who are interested can still see the process, but the video can still remain a relatively short tutorial of the process of doing that. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I'm going to put some of these saplings away. We're going to leave the wood in my inventory because I plan on going caving. So we're going to grab another potion of water breathing, and I'm going to go diving in that cave once again. My axe, having done a bunch of wood chopping, is now a little bit the worse for wear, and I need something to repair it. Now, the Minecraft pros out there are probably going to advocate for me fishing until I get a mending book or finding a village where I can trade a mending book from a villager, but in this case, I think since we're still in the early stages of this series, I want to repair my tools with diamonds once or twice, and then we'll go into getting mending and so forth a little bit later on. I think the best way to get down to where that geode was and everything was down here, so let's drink a potion and let's dive right in. I honestly don't really remember the route I took to get down here, so I'm going to be following some of the lights because the glow lichen and yes, there we go. The jack-o'-lanterns is what I was looking for from the last one. And there are even glow squid down here as well. Glow squid are like a variant of the squid that you find in rivers and oceans, except they glow with this kind of ethereal light. And when we kill them, the way we would with the squid on the surface, they drop glow ink sacs, which I should have picked up if there were some around here. Yep, there we go. We'll go into what glow ink sacs do a little bit later on, but as we explore down here, I'm probably going to hop back out into that cave we discovered the other day, and we're just going to have a fun episode where we explore that, but in the meantime, I figured it was probably a good idea to have some sort of topic to talk about for the rest of this episode, because we've been caving before at this point, and while this cave obviously has a few surprises for us, it's not going to be anything that we haven't really seen before. So I figured this would be a good time to talk about advancements, which are a concept that we've touched on very briefly as we've been collecting them throughout the series, but I haven't really touched on what they do. So we're going to do a quick explanation of advancements up front, and then the rest of this is going to be a fun expedition through this cave, and hopefully gathering a bunch of resources we can use for future episodes. So advancements are Minecraft's way of both tracking your progress and indicating what you could do next. Basically, it gives you an overview of what's possible in Minecraft on a fairly basic, intended by the developers level, and then you kind of get to choose your path through the game a little bit. The initial advancements pane, the heart and story of the game, is just titled Minecraft, and that opens up for the first time when you get yourself a crafting table. So once you have a crafting table, you'll be able to access the advancements pane from the game menu or by hitting the L key. And this box basically guides you through the progression of the game. It starts out by telling you to make a new pickaxe so that you can mine stone. You get an upgrade by constructing a stone pickaxe, then you smelt an iron ingot, and that leads into getting armor, getting an iron pickaxe so that you can acquire things like diamonds and then get a piece of diamond armor and an enchanting table. Then the other track here leads you through the progression of filling a bucket with lava, turning that into obsidian, build, light, and enter a nether portal, and then it branches out into a couple of other things from there. Once you've been to the nether, once you've stepped into that nether portal, the nether advancements tab opens up, and that's where, once you've gone to the nether, and it says bring summer clothes, that's funny. It's got a branching tree of all of the stuff that it's possible to do in the nether, and since the nether is more about exploration, it's much more about finding the stuff that you can find out there, and it's not a guarantee that you're going to run into things with a certain order of progression. You end up with breaking your way into a fortress being an option, but just as easily entering a piglin bastion remnant being an option as well. You can also tangle with some ghasts if you feel brave. You can look for ancient debris, which we will definitely cover in a future episode. You can use the nether to travel 7 kilometers in the overworld, hinting at the fact that the nether can be used for fast travel. And then there's stuff like riding a strider, looking for all of the nether biomes, and even this bonus achievement here for taking a strider for a ride on a lava lake in the overworld. So at some stage when we return to this advancement, we're going to be bringing a strider back from the nether to the overworld and finding it a new home in a lava lake. At some point, we've also opened up the husbandry tab. I think this happens when you first get hold of crops or encounter animals, that kind of stuff. And this advancements tab has all the different stuff related to animals and farming in the overworld, basically. So we've got things like growing crops from seeds, fishing for the first time, and then catching fish in a bucket. We can also catch an axolotl and do fun stuff with axolotls a little bit later. We've got the glow ink now that we need to make the text of a sign glow, which kind of hints at the uses for glow ink. We can do things like breeding animals together and eventually breeding together all of the animals that can be bred, which does include some from the nether as well. So we'll look into that a little bit later. The other tab we've opened up here is adventure, and that has a lot more challenges, a lot more exploration-based rewards, and a lot of things that you'll end up doing over the course of your Minecraft life, but also some things that you can consider doing if you feel like it. For example here, free falling from the top of the world to the bottom of the world and surviving, and the icon for that being a water bucket hints at the fact that you can save yourself from a giant fall by placing a water bucket, having a water source to fall into. There are also things like trading with villagers, which we'll get onto in much more detail in future episodes. Killing any hostile monster will get you the Monster Hunter advancement, but what if you killed one of every hostile monster? Monsters Hunted is the challenge version of that. It basically proves your combat expertise against every single type of bad guy that the game is going to throw at you. And we've also got things like the spyglass achievements, which we started by looking at our pet parrot, but we also need to look at a ghast and eventually the ender dragon through a spyglass as well. There is a fifth advancements pane that will open up when we enter the end, but before we do that, we can look forward at the progression of the standard Minecraft advancements, and it hints at following an Eye of Ender. So we've got to figure out how we can craft one of those and then enter the end portal with it. Off to one side here, we also have the option to cure a zombie villager, which is another interesting goal that we'll cover in future. But basically, if you're not sure about what to do in Minecraft, if you're stuck for stuff to do whenever you hop in and play, consider looking at the advancements panel or achievements if you still need to get some of those in Bedrock Edition, and see if you can get hold of a few more, because that's a really neat way of figuring out what to do in Minecraft that day if you're stuck for stuff to do. In my case, though, I'm never really stuck for stuff to do, because look at this. Look at what the world has provided us right here. I really want to explore a lot more of this area, and so we're going to craft up a few more torches. I'm just going to make a stack of these for now, but we'll probably need a few more a little bit later. And let's dip into this mineshaft and get exploring. So my philosophy when it comes to doing stuff in Minecraft is to set a lot of player-led objectives nice and early. So while the game will provide things like advancements and giving you hints about stuff that you want to do, it's usually a good idea to set some sort of objective for yourself, especially once you're a bit more familiar with the game. You might be playing it for a second or third time in a new world, and you might be wondering what on earth you do, considering that you've already played through the game a couple of times. Setting some personal objectives for your playthrough really helps when it comes to the end game as well. Once you've beaten the Ender Dragon, you've been to the end, you've done a bunch of the exploration objectives, and your advancements tab might even be looking a little bit quiet at that stage, you're probably wondering what to do. And at that stage, it's really down to your play style and the kind of stuff you like doing in the game. In my case, I've always considered myself a builder. I really like building in this game, and it's one of my objectives for this series to end up building a base in every biome if I can. I really like the concept of setting up a base everywhere in the world, trying out different build styles, and hopefully expanding my horizons a little bit in terms of what I can build. If building is not your jam, but exploration is, then I think 1.18 is a fantastic update for that, because there are so many new caves and biomes and landscapes out there to explore. I think it's probably a really good objective to start with if you want to explore and find every biome. There is even an advancement for that in the advancements panel. It's called Adventuring Time, and it's this one down here for discovering every biome. So far, I've been around this world a bunch. I've only discovered 19 of the possible 50 biomes that are out there. So I think Adventuring Time is a really good goal to start with, and then from there, you can decide which biomes are your favorite and which ones you feel like returning to, maybe to set up a base, maybe to do some farming, whatever you feel like doing at that point. I'm going to grab a few more of these resources as I walk through the cave here, but bear in mind I also have a fair amount of iron right now, so I'm probably going to be ignoring some of the more basic stuff. What I am looking for, though, is coal. I could never have enough coal as far as I'm concerned, and I think it's probably a good idea to mine up some of this stuff while it's here, because I'm not certain exactly when I'll be back. But you'll notice the advancement panel doesn't say a huge amount about stuff like redstone. There aren't really that many objectives that are focused on the redstone side of the game and the more technical aspect, and that is because so much of that stuff is player defined. It kind of comes out of players using these components for inventive things over the years, and Mojang doesn't really prescribe a way of approaching technical Minecraft. It tends to be much more about the player's own ingenuity and what's called emergent gameplay. The idea that the game is capable of stuff that the developers didn't necessarily intend. And so you'll find that most of the time redstone-led objectives are really up to the player, and at that point that's really when your own creativity comes into play, along with the creativity of the community, many of whom have made fantastic tutorials to follow if you get stuck for what to do with all that redstone. And if combat is your jam, then exploration will probably have to be as well, because I think for greater combat challenges, it's usually best to look a little bit further afield and find some cool stuff that you can turn into a combat challenge. Once again, the creativity has to come into play a little bit. For example, running across a cave like this, we might end up encountering some more monster spawners, and we could turn those into a little arena combat minigame for ourselves if we wanted to, something to keep those combat skills a little bit sharper. In the meantime, though, I'm happy just bullseyeing creepers from a distance and looking around. But at this point, I've noticed my inventory filling up really quickly. We've got a bunch of blocks and stuff on us, we've got a bunch of raw materials, and it's all different, so it's not really going to help us all that much to condense stuff down into single blocks, because I still want to take with me the glow berries, the glow ink, the iron ingots, the raw copper, the lapis, all of this stuff that's just taking up different spaces in my inventory. So I think we need to return to the surface and craft ourselves an ender chest. Returning to the surface could be a bit of a problem though, because I no longer have a potion of water breathing, and the only way I know to get in and out of this cave is via this aquifer. So instead, I think we're probably just going to pillar our way out of here. Now, I think we're going to make our exit from this area here so that we're coming into the cave from the same point and we know where we're going to be exploring from, where these jack-o'-lanterns are, basically. The idea is that we're simply going to be pillaring up vertically to get out of here. And this breaks one of the rules of Minecraft in a small way, because digging straight up can often be a little bit dangerous. If you don't know what's directly above you, then you could potentially be digging upwards into an area filled with lava. There are lava lakes throughout the world, and sometimes they will generate in some weird places. But the way to get around that really is to keep an eye on the blocks that you're digging through and make sure there are no drips of lava coming through from the block above, because that is a telltale sign that there is a liquid of some sort above you. In this case, we've ended up coming up into water, and so around here, we can actually create an air pocket where that gravel was, which will be good. We can catch our breath up here, but as we swum up into this cave, we'll need to block off the water coming in from all sides, and that way we can drain all the water out of this area and make sure that we can continue to pillar up. So I'm going to swim my way back into this, swim all the way down, and then block off this block here, and very quickly we're going to place some blocks above us to clear out all of that water. And then once we break out all of those blocks again, the water will no longer be there, and we can continue to pillar up. And every time you pillar up a few more blocks like so, we're going to place a torch and then break out the blocks that are above us, because the torch will also break any gravel that falls on there since it can't occupy the same block space, meaning that we should hopefully be able to get out of here without suffocating in gravel either. Let's switch to the more efficient pickaxe so we can do this a little bit faster, shall we? There we go. And sooner or later we'll hit a patch of dirt which should break through onto the surface. There we go. And thankfully it's daytime, and we're also not too far from home. There's our fishing shack over there in the distance. So in order to mark the location of this place so that we can get back down via the same route, we're going to leave a little pillar of stone here with some torches on either side, and that will at least mark that we can dig directly down here to get back to a safe location where our cave was and continue our exploration from there. So now I want to make an ender chest, and the first thing I'll need to do for that is probably put away all of this loot, actually. There we go, forgot how much I had on me for a moment there. Then we're going to grab this ender pearl and 1 blaze powder, which will take this one out of the brewing stand. We still have some blaze rods in here, so we can grab more of those if we want to. And we are going to make an eye of ender, which you might remember is what we need to use eventually to follow an Eye of Ender to the end portal. But for now, the Eye of Ender can also be part of a crafting recipe, which will require us to get hold of a bit of obsidian as well. So I need to don my gold helmet because we might as well go back through the nether. Because we're back at my favorite place to gather obsidian from, this jungle lava lake. And we're going to break out a bunch of these blocks until they turn into obsidian once again, and we're going to gather as much of this as we care to. And there we go, we've got 8 obsidian. Now with 8 obsidian and an Eye of Ender in the center, we can make ourselves an ender chest. The ender chest is a really useful thing. We can place this down anywhere in the world, put some items in it, and then any other ender chests that we craft and placed elsewhere in the world will all share the same inventory. So we can put this down in our mine, throw a bunch of stuff in it, come back, open another ender chest here at our house, and it will have all of the stuff that we just put in over at the mine. Basically, it is one inventory that can be accessed from several different locations. The problem with the ender chest right now, though, is that we only have 1 of them, and when you put down an ender chest, it can only be obtained again if you break it with a silk touch pickaxe. Break it with any other kind of pickaxe and it will break back down into the obsidian that we used to craft it, but the ender chest itself will be lost and we won't get the Eye of Ender back. So I might actually try and re-roll enchantments in the enchantment table a couple of times until we can get silk touch on a book that we can apply to our unbreaking efficiency pickaxe. And when that doesn't work, we'll do some fishing to see if we can fish up a silk touch book, but also get some more experience back. Okay, so after a whole bunch of fishing, I got myself a lot of enchanted books, none of which have silk touch on. I got some really good stuff though. I got some fire protection, some punch protection, bane of arthropods. Yeah, it's not so great, but then I have efficiency, fire aspect, we've got efficiency on there, we've got power 3, sweeping edge, even frostwalker 2, which is another treasure enchantment like mending that you can't get out of the enchantment table. I also ended up with a bit of a captive audience, so I'm gonna probably head away from them. But finally, after re-rolling the enchantment table and using up my XP a bunch of times, the enchantment table was finally showing me a silk touch book, but it wasn't showing it on slot number 3, it was in slot number 2, so I even get that for 2 levels, and that's really quite good. I also kept a bunch of the Unbreaking 2 books, because sometimes I have difficulty getting Unbreaking. I got a Feather Falling book that I can add to my boots, but neither of those are things I want to worry about right now, because not the grindstone, there we go, I can put Silk Touch on this pickaxe now, and I'm very happy with that. All we need is mending, and that's going to be a permanent part of my toolkit, and I can finally stop fishing and go back to that awesome cave. And back here at my stone obelisk, I can just hop on down here and dig down where I was. And the cool thing about this is I get to talk about Silk Touch now as well. There we go, back into the cave, and we've got a bunch of junk on us right now, which I'm probably just going to chuck out into the water here for a second. We'll keep the cobblestone on us, but we'll throw the rest of those blocks because we can always get more of those later. So we now have Silk Touch on this pickaxe. This is an enchantment which is mutually exclusive with Fortune. You cannot have both of them on the same pickaxe, because where Fortune breaks these ore blocks down into more ores, Silk Touch allows you to obtain the ore block itself without it breaking. Not only that, but if you break stone with a Silk Touch pickaxe, it doesn't break down into cobblestone either. You get natural stone from that. So if the block is obtainable using the type of tool you've got Silk Touch on, it gives you the block itself and not its products. The same goes for this lapis ore right here. I can pick that up and take the block home with me. I can take home this coal ore as well. I could basically grab all of the ores in here with this Silk Touch pickaxe. So this opens up a whole new way of mining for us, because if we wanted to, instead of breaking the ore blocks down into their components and then finding our inventory flooded with all of the different types of, like, you know, copper ore and then having to craft that into raw blocks and everything like that, instead we could just take the ore blocks themselves home with us. So if I grab a couple of blocks of the copper ore over here, we're not getting raw copper from it, we're getting the ore blocks themselves. So where that might break down into multiple pieces of copper and we'd have to craft that back into blocks of raw copper to condense it in our inventory, this way we end up getting to gather a whole bunch of copper ore blocks that we can fortune back at the base at our leisure. But the other important thing is that we can now pick up and move our ender chest, meaning that if I put the ore blocks in here like so and I break the ender chest with our Silk Touch pickaxe, being very careful to use the right one here, I can put the ender chest back down over here and it's still got the same contents in it, meaning we can move this chest basically anywhere and it will allow us to access the inventory. Then, if we are able to find and kill another enderman, it drops an ender pearl, we could make ourselves another ender chest, and we could set these up at 2 different locations that would share the same inventory. And whether you think it's more effective to gather these ores with Silk Touch or to just fortune them and craft them all into blocks, the fact is we have the option to do both now. And over there is another enderman, so I'm thinking I might carve a hole in this wall here, stack another bit of stone there, and see if we can get this guy's attention. Always a little bit scary staring an enderman down, but I think we'll be able to take him out, and if he drops another ender pearl, then that's a second ender chest for us. Oh, but he didn't. Okay, never mind. I'm sure we'll find another one down here. This is a pretty big cave. I'm also hearing a bunch of spiders down here, and so I'm wondering if maybe we have another cave spider spawner down here in an abandoned mine shaft, or if it's just a couple of spiders roaming around in the corridor. But something tells me... Yep, we got another enderman down there. Something tells me we have cave spiders roaming this area too. Oh, yes, finally, that guy dropped an ender pearl. Brilliant stuff. And it sounds like the spiders are getting a little further away, but I'm definitely hearing a lot of them behind the walls here, so it sounds like there is a cave spider spawner somewhere in this mine shaft. But we're gathering a bunch of ore blocks already, and if we wanted to, if we didn't have Silk Touch, we could always just leave the ender chest over here at the edge of the cave, maybe where we had our entrance come down from the surface, and that way we could just craft another ender chest, leave the main one here, and then craft another one back at our base, and they would share the same inventory, so we could always pick up the ores that we'd gathered from our caving trip. But having Silk Touch and being able to take it with us is kind of a useful thing. If you think about it another way, the ender chest is also kind of insurance against losing some of your equipment. Let's say, for example, that I was worried about dying down here because I was running out of food and I'd taken a couple of hits and I didn't really have any easy ways of healing up. If I was certain that I wasn't going to make it back to the surface, I could put all of my gear into this ender chest, leave the pickaxes and everything behind, and then if I was able to open an ender chest somewhere else in the world, maybe back at my base after I had died, all of my gear would be in there, along with all of the other stuff I'd been able to store in the ender chest. So it's actually kind of a neat way of making sure you don't end up losing all of your equipment on a dangerous caving trip, which might end up being a concern here, because I'm pretty sure... Oh no! This isn't a cave spider spawner at all. It's a regular spider spawner. We've stumbled on a dungeon. That's a really good piece of luck, actually. And I'm going to take out a bunch of these spiders who are hanging around up here by the ceiling. We can light this up. And it sounds like, yeah, there's a bunch more in that corner as well. Wow. All right, this is a dungeon spawner, and this is similar to the cave spider spawners that we found in the abandoned mine shaft, but significantly different in that it spawns regular spiders and it appears inside this box of cobblestone. These spawners will spawn mobs in the same way that the cave spider spawners and the blaze spawner that we found previously have. We can probably take some of these torches down off the walls though, because usually one torch in these is enough to disable the spawner, because the mobs that spawn from these also have to spawn in complete darkness now, based on the same spawning rules as we get at nighttime on the surface and in the caves around us. The spawners also come with some loot chests, which in this case contain find some pretty interesting loot. We've got some gunpowder, we've got some redstone dust there as well, some pumpkin and wheat, we've got some beetroot seeds there as well, a few bones, a golden apple, and a music disc. And in this one here, we've got another golden apple and a little bit more of the same stuff. That's pretty cool. I think we're going to take a lot of this stuff with us, and we can stash it all safely in the ender chest as loot and come back to it later. I'm also going to put away the ender pearl and the stone that I've collected so far so that we keep a little bit of the natural stone on us, but we keep some spare stacks of stone in there so it doesn't clog up my entire inventory. This spawner, though, is an excellent find, and we might end up returning to this in future if we want to make a spider farm, although the multiple cave spider spawners we found in that other abandoned mineshaft by the jungle are still probably preferable right now because there's just more of them. It's pretty exciting to have found this cave so close to our base, though, because this is definitely a really large cave system. We could come back down here and get all kinds of resources from this place, and it looks like we are now wrapping around to the place that we explored around to the other side there, but this leads down into the deep slate layers where potentially we could find and silk touch some deep slate ores as well. The important thing to note, though, is that the deep slate ores aren't going to stack with the regular ores in our inventory, so that's the point at which Fortune might end up having the advantage over Silk Touch when it comes to inventory management, because the Silk Touch pickaxe will pick up all of these ore blocks while the Fortune pickaxe would drop the products of them, and so we could combine the redstone dust into redstone blocks from both of the different types of ores. Same goes for the gold and copper and everything else. We could combine them into resource blocks, and that way the products of the deep slate gold and the regular gold would all be stored in the same place, which might save us a little bit of space. Likewise, the redstone and the deep slate redstone aren't going to stack together either, and already my inventory is getting full up of the ore blocks. So if we wanted to, we could fortune each of those and just combine the redstone into redstone blocks, and then it wouldn't take up quite as much space once we encounter larger amounts of this. But for now, instead, I'm going to stash it in my ender chest, because we have a lot of room in here for all different kinds of blocks, and it's actually kind of nice to have all of these almost like as a collection, even if we plan to fortune them later. One thing to note about Silk Touch in these deeper levels, though, if you Silk Touch Deep Slate, much like stone, you acquire the blocks of Deep Slate instead of them breaking down into cobbled Deep Slate. But unlike the cobbled Deep Slate, you can't make blocks out of regular Deep Slate. They won't turn into Deep Slate brick or tile or slabs or anything like that. You can only make those recipes out of the cobbled Deep Slate. So that's just something to bear in mind. If you wanted to gather a bunch of Deep Slate to build with, but you don't feel like building with the regular ordinary blocks of deep slate that you see in the walls around you, if you want to turn them into different variants, make sure you switch to a pickaxe that does not have Silk Touch. This cave is absolutely massive, and it's so twisting and turning as well. There's all kinds of cool stuff down here, and I'm really enjoying exploring it. We've got redstone ore over here. It goes even deeper. Oh my goodness. That must go down into like the negative 40s or something. This is a really deep section of the cave. Maybe if we carve ourselves a little staircase in the side here, we're going to pick up a lot of regular deep slate from this, but hey, not to worry. Well, now we're down here, let's quickly check our Y coordinate. Yep, negative 48. Awesome stuff. So we are low down in the world now. We might find some diamonds if we search some of the nooks and crannies of this cave, which seems to go down even deeper in some of these trenches here. And of course, I spotted this Enderman wandering around, so how could I pass up the opportunity to try and get another Ender Pearl? Yes, we got another one. Incredible. Okay, so that is 2 for 2, or 2 for 3, because that one earlier didn't get us one, but that means we can craft 2 more ender chests, as long as we're okay going and getting some more obsidian. And right here in this crevice, we have stumbled upon a little vein of diamond ore. Incredible. Let's silk touch both of these, and we now have some deep slate diamond ore to add to our collection. We could take that back and fortune it if we wanted to, or we could just keep it, because honestly, diamond ore is kind of nice to have around. You can flash the cash a little bit if you've got some diamond ore handy. Either way, we'll pop it in the ender chest and save it for later, along with some of the bones and gunpowder and the other ender pearl that we've gathered. Looking pretty good in there. This cave is cool. We have so much stuff going on in here, and it feels like we have barely scratched the surface. I see a little bit of iron here and there in this patch of tuff, but I do not think, from my early impressions, that this is a huge vein of iron. That would be a little bit too much to ask for from this already pretty glorious cave. No, I think that's just a regular blob of tuff with some deep slate iron ore generating in it. But around the corner, we have a few more diamonds, and it's looking like we've got at least 2 blocks in this vein. maybe no more, unfortunately, as we go through the rest of the wall here. Nah, looks like just those two. Not to worry, though. Oh, and down here at the bottom of the world, I have just spotted another dungeon. There's a little bit of cobblestone over there to our left, and that indicates that there is a dungeon right there. I don't know what the spawner will be, but judging by the zombies now crawling out of its depths, I have a feeling it's a zombie spawner. Yep, it looks like it is spawning more mobs for us to fight. Let's whip in here and, yep, plug that with a torch. It has zombies in there. You can tell from the mob spinning around inside the spawner cage. Now, one thing I will point out at this point, because I'm sure some of you might have put 2 and 2 together and think, well, if you silk touch this spawner, you can take it with you. Unfortunately, my friends, that is not the case. Spawner blocks are not obtainable. They don't break down into anything, except for maybe XP orbs, but then you can't craft XP orbs back into something, and so a spawner block cannot be obtained because Silk Touch has no effect on it. Basically, it will just break the same way it would with a regular pickaxe. But we can still loot the spawner, grab all of this extra stuff that's in here, all of the goodies, the name tags, the extra coal. We've got another music disc in there as well. This is awesome, and I'll pop down my ender chest just so we can stash some of this cool stuff away and make some room for the spawner's loot in my inventory. But looking at some of my equipment, my bow is getting dangerously low on durability. We'll need to repair that. And now we have a few more diamonds, we might be able to repair my diamond axe as well. So I think I'm going to take another quick look around here in case there's anything I missed down this end of the cave. But then I think we'll return to the top of our cave, leave via the exit that we made earlier, and then maybe we can just look over all the loot we've gathered from this cave before we wrap up the episode. Oh, what a cave, though, my friends. We didn't even go this way, and there's a whole bunch more stuff down that way. Of course, we're leaving ores all over the place down here. I definitely didn't collect everything from that last cave, and once again, that's sort of for good reason. I honestly prefer leaving a few ores there. It gives us a reason to come back and explore a little bit further if we want to. But now, the task of pillaring up to the surface, and let's see what we've got when we get back to the house. Good morning, everyone. The rain is clearing up. There are a few mobs out here that I had to dodge my way through on my way back here, but while there are a couple of creepers still lurking around and a couple of skeletons taking shelter underneath the eaves of the trees, we have a whole bunch of stuff here in our ender chest, and it's all a little bit disorganized, actually, and I've still got some mob drops in my inventory, so I think I'm going to tuck away some of the less significant stuff here, and let's see what we've ended up bringing back from the caves. So we got a bunch of ores stashed in here, which while it is tempting to keep hold of all of them, I think we're probably going to fortune them. But as you can see, I've made another ender chest just to prove to you that if we check the ender chest over here, once again, the inventory has the same contents. I think you grasp the concept of that by now, but it always makes for a kind of a fun magic trick. And yes, I did go to the nether and get a bunch more lava to turn into obsidian in order to get 2 ender chests and show you that. So we're going to take out all of this and we're going to fortune it because I kind of want to prove whether or not it is more effective to keep hold of the individual ore blocks like this. So let's take a quick look at how much space this takes up, ignoring these over here for a second. This is taking up 12 spaces of our ender chest right now, and if we start breaking down some of these ore blocks, I think we're going to find that it takes up a little bit less space in our ender chest if we end up fortuning all of this stuff and then turning it into resource blocks. So we'll lay out all of the iron first, we'll add the coal in on top of that, then I guess we'll also do the copper, we'll add the gold on top of that, mix in some of the lapis, throw in the redstone, and finally on top, the diamonds. And if nothing else, it's pretty cool seeing all of this stuff in one place, but let's fortune it. Another thing to remember, of course, is that if you silk touch all of this ore, you won't get any XP for mining it, because XP only occurs when you break it down into its finished products. Well, it looks like we definitely don't have enough room for it in our inventory if all we're dealing with is the raw product, but let's see if we craft this down into resource blocks in our crafting table, how much we are left with here. And it looks like we've got quite a lot of the copper, a decent amount of the gold, and we'll have to collect up a bunch more of the copper now that we have room for it before all of that ends up despawning. But even then, it feels like we're going to use up a little bit less inventory space by fortuning the blocks after all, because obviously we have different types of diamond ore to contend with, and yes, I did leave a little bit of coal out, and it does look like that's taking up the same amount of space, but consider that all of those blocks of iron and gold now condense down into raw blocks, and each of those is only going to drop between 1 and 4 iron or raw gold, so chances are you're going to be able to condense that down into block form and save a bit of space. With copper, redstone, and lapis, though, because the blocks themselves drop so many items, it might actually be preferable to keep them as ores for a while, not least because we also have tons and tons of copper already, so we might end up saving copper ores with Silk Touch in future until we need a little bit more copper in order to smelt, and in that case we're probably going to do some more with that in future. But it looks like the rest of these are going to condense down nicely if we fortune the ores themselves. But there is a bunch more we'll be able to do with Silk Touch on our side, but I think for now that's probably where we're going to wrap up this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed this little caving trip with me, and hopefully you've learned a couple of helpful tips for caving in your own worlds. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode for me if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care, bye for now.